Hello, welcome to today's stream. Today we're going to be picking up where we left off a couple of weeks ago. Actually, before I do anything like that, I just want to do a quick audio check. Give me 2 secs. Alright, that sounds good. I'm just going to turn down my volume because it's really quite loud. And then I'll turn up yours. Give me 2 secs. Alrighty, let's do that there. That's better, and then I'll turn yours up. And then everyone can hear. Cool, alrighty. So, yeah, today's stream we're going to be picking up where we left off, which is the MVP submission tool. So, initially we were using, go ahead, stop this, close that down. So initially we were using a just a PowerShell, generic PowerShell script approach. So essentially we write cmdlets and then they'll kind of sit together in functions. I had a bit of a chat with the guys about it and was kind of thinking about what the best way to do it go is, and I was thinking making it a domain specific language. It was out of the call that I do think that it is a little bit there's a lot of it can be simplified significantly without having to still have PowerShell itself, but the thing is that people don't generically know PowerShell, and they could potentially struggle. So the goal is for the end user to have the best experience possible with the product. So switching from this kind of approach, we went with a DSL approach. And essentially what we've done here is it's more structured like a PESTA test. So essentially you have your activity, within the activity you have a contribution name, you can specify an argument list. That's obviously, these are optional parameters. Within that argument list, what you can do is you can put a whatever PowerShell you want in there. Oops, just make it the wrong. You can basically put whatever PowerShell you want in there, so it proves that it can be PowerShell, but it can be simple as well. So you can obviously, we can have just a generic activity like so, and it can just be straightforward. Now these items are mandatory, so article, area and contribution area and value are mandatory. So these are really the 3 things that you need to have in there. What's quite interesting is that I did a bit of work and just trying to work out what the best way to structure this code from a usability point of view. And there's a couple of things I came across, which was that ultimately with different areas you have different contribution names and values. So the names and values can change from area to area. So what I did was I wrote a HTML form structure. So essentially it's just a hash table, just a collection of an array of hash tables of all the different HTML element combinations that are required. So the first one here is default, so this is basically static and it doesn't change. A couple of cool little things in here is that the is required is basically only needed when it's true. So effectively when we combine and collate the required elements, what it does here, it looks at if it's true, and then basically it's implicitly true. So it means that if it's not there, it's implicitly false. So it will still explicitly set it if you set it to be false, but most of the time we don't. But ultimately you can see here you have our element name, and then we have our actual the name that we want to display to the end user. So it's effective. So it creates a mapping of such kind. One thing as well, which is really quite cool here, is that it allows you to have different element names can have different names with different areas. So what we did here, you can see in here, basically you just have the element names, and within there, so what you can do here is all we need to do is associate the element name to that specific action, and the name is the area that it is, the corresponding area that it matches to. So yeah, it's very straightforward. There's one thing that I do want to do here, and that's date. So date. One thing I want to do here is change just a little bit so that we can add native code within here. This is kind of starting to really go down in the weeds. But what we can do here is effectively we can do formatting within it, so we can actually describe the formatting or the type that we're wanting to achieve. Because a good example is here in Australia, we apply day, month, year. Now in US, it's month, day, year. That's the format that the portal accepts. Now, if you have, my idea is that if we write code that can pass the type, date, time, and it doesn't care what date time you're in. So if you're in US, or if you're in Australia, if you're in Europe, it will natively convert it to the US date time zone without having to do that process. So again, trying to make it as simple as possible. So that's what we're going to probably look at trying to implement today. It's mostly working. So this is all working. So we can connect to our MVP portal that fires up our Selenium. Then basically it'll browse to the activity. Now I'll quickly take you guys through the activity and just do a quick breakdown here. So the key take home here is that where the previous contribution based structure, where the contribution based structure was mainly PowerShell, and you have to create the activity and you have to save it. That's all embedded within the MVP activity itself, so you don't need to do that. One activity is for one contribution, so you can still script PowerShell around this. So ultimately we can wrap this within a for each loop or whatever. We can pass it potentially in the future. We might pass it similar to test cases. That is also a potential opportunity where we can just basically pass it a parameterized list where it just then goes and implements. So you don't even need to actually wrap it inside of for each. It'll do it for us. So things like that, that's obviously in the future, but I'm not kind of going for an MVP at the moment. A minimal viable product. So yeah, so if we have a quick look within the MVP activity, it's very similar kind of structure. So got rid of the dynamic parameters. We didn't need them here. So effectively you have our name, the fixture, and the argument list. It's very interesting about the parameters structure here, where I made the fixture if you have the fixture last, even though you can see here I'm specifying the parameter of list, the argument list, if you specify it last, it actually has trouble distinguishing between the two types. So what I did was I just placed it as the second parameter within our parameter set, and that fixed it. So there's a little gotcha there. So again, it's very kind of very rudimentary here. So ultimately what we do is we have a begin block. So we clear all our script blocks, script variables that we need, so that we can kind of communicate between area and value and contribution area. And then ultimately we're going to actually test our activity block first. Make sure that our driver is enabled and active. We're going to then wait for our elements to be available, and then we're going to go ahead and create a new activity. So obviously, yes, from that, from the other contribution we have here, we're actually doing a lot of the work for you. It's doing a lot of the work for you. Now within here, we'll just quickly go through here. So it's actually looking at the activity block. We're just basically breaking down, looking at the abstract syntax tree, and we're just making sure that those parameters or those area, contribution area, and value are present. It's not necessarily going to actually check to make sure that they're all accounted for, because I was kind of humming and hawing about this. But the problem with doing that is you kind of face with a chicken and the egg scenario, where what is going to happen is that you might have an activity. Might have an activity that contains a lot of PowerShell, and you are using some for each loops and things like that, and the script might not be able to ascertain whether there is the required attributes are available for, like the required values are set. So things like that, I think, is a nice to have, but I think it's going to cause issues down the line. So for the time being, I'm just saying, hey, as long as all three are available, then we'll just kind of leave it at that. We do come back to that at the end. So ultimately we come through MVP activity. So here we have an argument list that we can pass through. So we just basically, it takes a hash table and it just uses the call operator, and then basically it just passes it through. Otherwise, just invoke the script block. Either or, that's perfectly fine. And then if there's any sort of issues, it'll invoke a teardown. So when teardown happens, it will stop the MVP activity. You can see here we just got to try finally. So it's stopping that MVP activity. So we're closing it down. We're actually not saving it, and then we're just tearing everything back down again. So within that MVP stop activity, you can see here we're just going and clicking the cancel button. So if the activity doesn't exist or whatever, if the button doesn't exist, it doesn't care, who cares, it'll just carry on anyway. So that's really that. It's pretty straightforward. So now when it invokes it, obviously it's just invoking that script block. So the script block itself is what's actually just been invoked. So it's just running it. So within here, it'll run the area commandlet. So within here you can see, again, we're just testing the drivers. We're going to test our call stack to make sure that our call stack is correct. AKA, are we calling area from a nested within the call as a child function of MVP activity, or if it's not there, then get worried. So things like that, and then basically we're just going through trying to matching the area according to our activity types, and then basically getting the element and then inputting the element, which is pretty straightforward. Now it's a couple of, obviously, and that's pretty much the same. Only a couple of things that changed was that we basically set the area, and then once we've got the area, we also retrieve the HTML form structure for that specific area. So once we have that, it also means that we are pretty much good to go. So, and then obviously contribution area simplified, so you can effectively just pass an array, strings in there. It does the same thing. So if there's, it's just a looping process. Excuse me, sorry, I'm really tired. I didn't sleep well last night. So again, we just go through, select our contribution areas. Now, if there's a contribution area that you need to click the add button to add an additional contribution area when you're adding your third contribution area. So that obviously just automates that for us. And again, it's just straightforward, a little bit of Selenium in there. Just basically invoke that drop down. And that's pretty much that. And then the value again. So value is a very simple function where, again, we're just making sure that we're trying to get the element. So to backtrack a little bit here, so you can pass in the name or you can pass in the element. It doesn't matter. So the div ID. So within here, basically, it goes through, it matches according to the HTML data. So it looks for all the elements to make sure that it can match the names, either on the name or the element, div ID, and then it just goes ahead and finds it. If it found it, it then goes ahead and selects it, drop down, good to go. And that's pretty much that. Now you can see here at the bottom here, it's setting match is set, and this is where the cool part comes, is that it's tracking and it's keeping tracking of what it's set and what it hasn't set. So when we go to save our MVP activity down here, it actually validates to make sure that set doesn't have any false values set. So ultimately it makes sure that the everything that's required within the HTML form is set. And then what it does is it also, just as a secondary kind of check, it also searches the field for validation. Oh, sorry about that, I'll do that. It searches the field for validation errors. So within here, we're just going to just have a quick look at any sort of field validation error classes that have been set within the HTML form. And if there are, then grab the text from it and then go ahead and throw a terminating error. Now remember, any terminating error that gets thrown, that's all right, thank you. It will obviously trigger the teardown. So teardown is the equivalent of having a broken form. So then we have our save button. Obviously then it's going to go and try and find a save button and then go ahead and click it. Once that's pretty much done, this is the kind of the interesting bit. I found that when you have code, when you have multiple entries being added and over again, it kind of gets, the pointer gets quite slow over time. So to combat that, what I did was I wrote this code here effectively has a maximum length of 5 seconds, but it just has a sleep at the end of each submission. Now it's an incremental one, so it's not something that is it's not going to slow the code down initially, but it's kind of just to give that JavaScript a bit of time to process the request. I found that sometimes it doesn't, and then the request just times out. So this kind of helps it just move it along a little bit. You've got to be very gentle, I found, when working with this. So then that's pretty much it, and then it just invokes a teardown. So it's pretty, yeah, it's simple, but it's also quite in depth. To be honest, it's a talk in itself. But most people don't want to actually hear me talk about it, they actually want to see me use it. So let's go ahead and run it. So this is just a base loader that I wrote for the time being until I can actually, I do need to rewrite my build script. So ultimately the build script needs to be rewritten so it can interpolate all the functions back together. And then it's just going to be a single PSM1 file. That's it, it's just going to be a single PSM1 file with probably a PSD beside it, or it might be a PS1 file with the PSDs beside it. So I'm still thinking about that. I might just put PSSaki on there and kind of do the build for me. And then after that, I'm going to also build as a Choco package, and then basically just have a script to do its tests. We also need to get our unit tests and everything sorted. So that's pretty much been on the back burner at the moment. So I'm going to need to go and clean that up. So as you see, that's all the private tests that I wrote, and there's a lot more there. So we kind of need to do that. And then I'm also going to write some integration tests. So I've got a a React site, and what we can do is I'll build a really terrible copy of the site using this, and I can actually test the drop-down forms and the JavaScript UI using this. But also what we can do is within this site we can actually write some, I won't say flaky JavaScript, but we can write JavaScript to kind of try and time it out if we can. So alright, let's get stuck into it, and let's go and give a quick demo. And then what we're going to do is we're going to write some auto formatting code. So first things first, you know what, we'll just do this. So I'm not going to actually add an entry, I'm just going to let it time out, but you guys can kind of see what's going to happen here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to just get rid of that. Let's go ahead and run it. So opens up my HTML form. I'm just going to quickly log in. And you can see here, it's the little things that matter. So it's actually waiting for the login to complete. It's not going to continue until that's done. There's other things as well, so that if the portal already has, if you create an activity but it's already in the middle of activity, it'll automatically close the activity. So it has smarts to know that. So it's not a very kind of a one-sided process. It's very two-sided in that sense. It can detect differences within the portal and then basically change that. So you can see here now, I'm not going to show my full window. Basically, it's now going to automatically browse to the contributions. Now, keep in mind, this is for the actual people who are doing this for the first time. So this is going to be slightly different. So you can see here now, it's going to add, oh, it did it, and then it failed it. So, so we've got here an error, which is interesting. Cannot convert argument error record to an unable to enumerate contribution areas from source HTML. Throw terminating error for types this one. So what happened here was it had issues with contribution errors, which is interesting. So there's that's very interesting. So I'm going to drop a breakpoint on that, and we're going to try that again. So just going to pull this across. So you can see here, you can have, we'll just run this again. Now I can just go ahead and comment this out. The driver's still active, so we don't need to reconnect to the portal. So if we rerun this again, oops, we'll just breakpoint it on it, and I've just lost it. So it's set that. Now we're going to set the primary contribution area. I think what I might do here is work out why it's not doing that. So first thing first, what I usually will do here is just, I'm just going to run it and see what happens. So interestingly, you can see here it's returning from the cache. So if we have a look now, oh no, that's set it. So it's a PowerShell Gamma alert. So what did that throw an error? Unable to enumerate contribution errors from source HTML. Okay. The reason why this is happening, and this is interesting, so the way that it's able to match the data, so the drop-down box, is it actually needs to build the data. So this is interesting because this shouldn't have happened, but it did. So what happens within the HTML? Let me quickly. Actually, I can just show you within the code. It's easier to do it in the code. It calls this function here called get contribution areas, and what it does is it actually looks at the HTML. It looks at the HTML code, and what it does is it looks at the drop-down box, all the names and values, and then what it does is it constructs an object. Now I can manually specify all the different contribution areas, and I might do in the future if this issue continues to happen. But ultimately what it does is it actually dynamically builds it out. So if Microsoft make a change and they add a new contribution area like somewhere else, it then means that I can, that contribution area will just automatically get added. So it's just a really cool code that allows you to do that. So but yeah, that's what's happened. So but you can see here it added all three of them, so that's pretty cool. And yeah, so if we're pretty much stuck in the middle of it, so we can go ahead and can that. So the one thing I want to work on today is getting the auto date formatting and kind of just reworking some code here to work out if there's a way that we can kind of put some sort of script block or something within the configuration that allows us to within our HTML form structure here, so we can invoke it and it can just basically format the date for us. So if it's a you know, blah whatever, it'll just deal with it. So what I was thinking is that this is obviously a implicit keys within our hash table. So I was thinking we can just probably just put validate. I don't say validate. Let's just call it format. And then essentially it can just be a script block like so, and then we can just put a param, and we can just call it date. Now, if we do it this way, I'm just thinking about the implications, but if we do it this way, then it means that ultimately we just invoke it here and we can format it. So the first thing we'll probably need to do is work out what date time. So if we get culture, LCIDs. So LCID 303. So we're gonna get, this is where we, let's say, okay, yeah, so this is gonna be where we do our formatting. And what we can do here is MVP activity. Oh no, it'll be under value. Here, what we need to do is, so it matches it, gets the element, sets it. So here, if there is, we can format the data here. So if there's, you know, it requires some sort of change, like if it's uppercase, lowercase, that kind of thing, we just format it in here. So let's go ahead and do that. So if we got our formatting script block here, we can just pass in a parameter. Now, when we invoke a script block, let's go script block. There's multiple ways you can invoke a script block. Now, I just quickly want to show something. So we can invoke a script block like so. So if we go sb, we can go sb.invoke. That'll work. We can obviously use the AND operator, call operator, sorry, like so. That'll work. We can just, you know, dot sorted. That'll work. There's many different ways we can go into invoke command. But what I think we're going to do here is we're just going to use the invoke. The one thing, since we're only requiring specific parameters like, actually, what's that data? It's date. When you invoke with a parameter inside of a script block, let me just put param block in here. And this is where things get a little tricky. So if we go sb.invoke, you can see it's empty, but now if I invoke it with 1, you can basically pass the arguments within the method parameter, that's fine. The problem I found though is that it can kind of get a little bit weird if you're trying to pass in an array. It can get a little bit confused with arrays. So the better way I've found actually is to use call operator. And if we use the call operator and we go SB, you see still same, but you can actually go date and then 1, date P1. You can pass it through here. Now the better way of doing this is that you can actually just pass it as a you can actually pass the parameters itself. What else is the parameters? Oh, it's A, dirt. So the parameter, sorry, I can actually just pass the parameter like so, and that will work. So that means if we can actually parameterize our script block invocation, it means we can splat it. So what we can do here is if we just create a param, this is how it works on the when you invoke it. We can create a hash table, and then we just basically specify a parameter name and its value. This is param A, like so, and then basically like so. Oops. Get rid of that, and then just basically splat it straight through, and we don't need to do anything. It literally will do it for us, which is way cleaner. So that's what we're going to do here, because it means that the code is going to be way easier to deal with. But no, we can't, because ultimately, if we actually can't do that because we need to know the parameters, and we kind of don't really need to know them. If there's going to be one-off command parameters, we can probably just actually invoke it this way. And that will be fine. All right, let's do it that way. Okay. So first thing we need to do is get our culture. I actually think we need to try and pass it. Date, time. Let's just say. So it's date time, you can see there's culture info, so we can say new ENAU. So if we say, let's just say, let's do this, date time, let's give it 31st of the 10th / 2020, and then we can go date time, and then we can just go, let's say culture info equals new, and let's just go en-us like so. String was not recognized as a valid date time. Now if we go ENAU, you can see that passes. So copy paste that for a sec. And what we can do here, I'm just thinking about how I want to convert this. Now, so that's our current date. Oh, that's our current culture. TLTURE date time or date. So if we were to run that, so we just mock date and just say 31st of the 10th / 2020, like so. Date's actually one thing I strongly dislike working with. You can see that passes perfectly. Now we need to convert. Now I want to have a look. Let's see what happens now. I'm going to have a bit of a play around. Work out the best way to do this. So my idea here is pass it here. We can just go yes. So that passes it, which is fine. Now we need to actually output that. Just go to string, and then we can just go month, day, yeah. Like so. I'm just wondering, do we actually even need to pass it in the US if we've already passed it? I don't think we do, because we've already passed it. So we actually do that. So effectively, we can ingest it in our own culture, and then it just converts it to the US, like so. Now the question is, do I wrap this in a try catch with a customized error? Good question. What do you guys think? Should I wrap this in a customized try catch with its own error and just basically say it's failed, blah? For the time being, I don't think we need to, but it's kind of I'm sitting on the fence at the moment about it. Yeah, I'm sitting on the fence about it at the moment. But what do you guys think? The next thing we're going to do is I'm going to write a format for the URL. Now the reason why is because we need to fix the URL. So if someone puts in a bad URL, we need to fix that. So ultimately, we're going to do is just go right output here. And all we need to do here is go right output. I feel like we shouldn't do it inside of here, but we should do it inside the parent. That way we can basically say there was an issue and then just pass the error in when passing blah, and then drop the error in. That way we don't have to have excessive amounts of try catches, and we can just kind of have the parent deal with the issue. I think that's a better way of doing it. So let's go ahead and pass URI here. Easiest way of doing it is just do it this way. So what we can do here is maybe just go URI. I just want to make sure that if I put a terrible site in, let's just go HTTPS. I'm going to go the other way, a.com. Can still pass it, original string. And then we can just use the absolute URI. That's an absolute URI. So when it calls our URI, it can just format it, make it nice and awesome, and that will fix that. So then we have the description and the title. There's not really much that needs to be done there. I don't really think now it says it's required false here. That is going to preference I'm intrigued to find out how many others below here have URL 7. Ooh, that's now another interesting question. Ooh. Do I don't want to have to write a validator for every one of them. That's just excessive. I'm wondering whether it just takes it from the default. That's when things get a little bit complicated, because I don't think it can. But you don't want to reuse code. But I think if we could assume that basic, we can make the assumption, also the assumption, but what we're going to do here, is we're going to lift out the format out of here. The reason why is because this is going to, it's not in the right spot. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new file. I'm going to call this HTML form structure format. So this is just another array. We can just call it HTML format, validate. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to basically include the name. So this name here, and then it's format. So and then it's format. So we grab that, copy that out. So that way it will construct it from that data set as well without having to reuse code. There's only 2 of them anyway, so I don't think that it's going to get too complicated. So I think we'll be fine. And then the next minute we're going to have stuff going everywhere. Oh no, it's going to be date. It's going to be this. It's going to be date and URL. And then we can just go ahead and copy that, paste that there. So we've got date and then URL. And that's pretty much that. So that means now, I'm just going to quickly add that to the loader. I'm just going to dot source for the time being. Like so. And that is that. Cool. So once that's done, we can now go ahead and look at how we're going to construct this. So with all the data's intact now, so if we get the HTML form structure here, let me show you what happens here. And let's just say it's activity. Oh. This article, sorry. You see there it returns a object containing what's required, what's required, what's been set, and its name and its matching element, or div ID. I'm just going to call it element for the time being. So what we need to do here is we need to fix. I think we can construct it, and then what we do is we go through and then we tack it on the end. So we look for any name. So let's do it that way. So what we're going to do now, so we get our output. What we're going to do here, we're going to do a select expression and join it. What do I call it? Format. Let's just call it format. And then let's go expression. Oops, hash table. Yep. And then within here, what we can do is we can say global HTML form structure where, and then we can say dot name is equal to, and then we can say, okay, that's good. We can say, because I'm using this can, I'm pretty sure this can match either on the name or the element. So I think what I might do is say it's matched HTML form structure. Yeah, we can match it on the name. No, because it needs to be this. No, sorry, no. It needs to be the actual name. It doesn't need to be the parent name. It just needs to be the name. So if we go back down here, we can just basically say name is equal to, which it is. Now, since we're inside of where, we might just call this name and do that. Like so. And what we're going to do is drop a breakpoint on that and run it and see what happens. So let's go ahead and just bring that into memory. Let's bring that into memory. Let's go ahead and run it. So now let's just quickly run a quick select on that to see what we get. So we've got format. So we've got name format. So that doesn't seem right. So that's URL. Ooh. Let's dump that in an object and take a closer look. Which one is that? One is that. That's just the 0. Dot format. Okay, yes, so we've selected the hash table now, so all we need to do is go where name is that, and then I'm just thinking out loud here for a sec. I think what we, because could do a select expand. But the problem is that I don't know what's going to happen. Let me just create a quick object. Since I've used PSR, select expand. That's the problem I'm worrying about. Just wrap it in a try catch. That will fix it. But ultimately, if we do that, then it's just easier. I just usually just grab the property and wrap it inside brackets. And we can just then go, since we've got it, if it's there, we then go dot format. So if we go back to HTML form structure, and then we can just go dot format. We don't really care if it fails, if it's empty, it's empty, who cares? So let's now go ahead and test that again. You can see it's empty, and then we have an actual script block with parameter set. Then we have parameters there. So yes, good. So now let's go ahead and output, replace that. Let's go URI, and let's just go Format. It should be. We just go 0, and then we can go. That's 0. Okay, 0 is date, so we can just go then call format. Invoke, and we can say A, and we get an error because it has no idea what that is. If we change that to a 31st of the 10th, so 2020, we then can actually get a nicely formatted American date time. So don't have to do anything. We can pass in whatever date time we want within whatever culture, and it'll just go ahead and convert it to that the required date time format required for the portal. So now, since we have that, let's go ahead and just quickly save that, close that, just replace that. So let's just add a quick comment. We can just say join the script block, the formatting, script block from the HTML form. And so we can effectively now do auto formatting on our code, which is pretty cool. So now we've done that, let's rerun this. I'm gonna have to write unit tests for this. Yes, 100% I need to write unit tests for this. And let's just go ahead and recall this. So get HTML form structure. We can just give it a name. So let's just go article. Breakpoint. Just construct that breakpoint, and you can see here we now have our full object with a script block which we can invoke to actually perform some kind of formatting on that, which will fix a lot of our issues. And it will make and this little piece of code will just make it a lot more easier for anyone who's trying to do any sort of formatting. So if it's it'll just format it the correct way, and then that's that. So cool. All right, so now let's go ahead and implement this. So what we need to do now is, if there's a formatting property, we need to invoke the script block and format the data. So you can see here we are finding our element, passing a driver, we're looking for that ID, and then we're basically passing the value. Now, prior to passing this value in, we know the value. Where's the value? Okay, so value gets passed in. We can now just format it the correct way. So we can actually just say, this is really where now we can kind of change things up a little bit. So one thing I found with the module, the Selenium module, is that it doesn't. It's not very accepting of splattered parameter sets, so I kind of had to leave everything strung out. This would be an excellent opportunity to just splat it in and then be done with it. I might try it and we might just test it and see what happens, but I know that there was issues with it last time, so what we might do now, we'll give it a go and see what happens. And so all we then need to do here is, we've got our element, we just need to do a lookup. So we've got the name, we've got the value, we've got the form structure, we've got the match data there, so it'll now be contained within this variable here. So we can just basically say if matched dot format, we can just say that's pretty much that. So if it exists, fantastic. Let's go and invoke it. So what we can do is just then go match.format .invoke, and then we can just pass in a value. And what we can do here we can change our code. So it's now going to splat. So let's go ahead and do that. So what we got here is the element and the keys. So we can make it implicitly false. Sorry, implicit. It's implicit where it just passes the value in, and if there's something if the format the script block is present, it'll then just replace that key there. So that will actually fix it, a lot of it. And to be honest, we could just even pass in the default parameter that we could, but we're not. So we can just do this. So now we can get our parameters there, and what we can do here is just do this dot keys equals, and that will change it if it needs to be changed, and then still invoke it, and we don't have to write complicated logic here. The one thing we do need to do now is handle it. So we're going to handle this. So let's just wrap it inside catch. And we're going to need to throw a custom error here. So what we're going to do here, now keep in mind, we're going to need to write a custom error, but also pass the error that it was, pass the error that it actually got. So if we invoked something, for instance, and we still need to actually read the error. So we're not getting a generic error, we're getting a wrapped error with some additional additional error content. So, and that's just basically how help identify where it is. I'm going to take a small break for 2 minutes. I can just hear my daughter crying, and it sounds like she's just bumped her head. Give me 2 seconds. Okay, I'm back. So let's carry on. So we're going to need to write a generic error now, so let's go ahead and do that. Where are we? So what we have here in our resources, we have our localized data. This is really where we just put all our errors. So let's go add a new error, and let's call it error formatting value. Just say error just say error. There was format, and then we're going to say 0, which is going to be format the name with the value. So there's there was an error raised when attempting to format 0 with and then we can just go dot, and then we can just say error, and then we can just pass in the error like so, and we just pass the error message. and that can be that. So what we can do now, so remember it's name value error. So what we do here, if we go back here, we can just go throw localized data, error formatting value, then we'll use the format operator. So then we're going to use the name. So we're going to go name value, and then we're actually going to capture the error. So what we need to do here, we need to get the error message. Just need to have a quick look within it, just make sure I'm looking for the right property. PS message details. Nope. Just to string it, what will happen there? I'm just going to string it. And then we just go to string, and just convert it to a string, and then we're good. And that's it. So that is, we can format our data, invoke our expression, and then so cool. All right, so that's done. Let's test it. So the way we're going to need to test it is just load it up, see what happens. So I'm going to drop a breakpoint on here. We're going to now keep in mind that the driver's still active. We haven't closed PowerShell. I haven't closed that window, I believe. That window's still open. So if we go ahead, we've got everything's cached, and that's actually another thing I forgot to mention. So the contribution areas and the articles, so when it dynamically builds that, it caches it so that it only does it once. So ultimately the first time's a little, it takes about a second to pull all that data out, and then once it's cached, you don't need to do it anymore. So we've got our breakpoint set, so we can actually just go ahead and rerun this and see what happens. So I'm just watching the form. I can see it's filling out. All right, so now we've added our invocation. So what are we actually formatting? So let's have a quick look. So we're formatting our date. So our date is definitely in the wrong format, which is actually in the right format, hilariously. So it's going to break. So this is going to be a good test to see what's going to happen when it breaks. So let's actually just run it without actually running it. You can see there, string was not recognized as a valid date time. Cool. So what we can do now is it should fail. You can see it's running it. Goodness gracious. And now we've got an error. So let's see what happens here. Did I actually write an error? Oh no, it's not, because I didn't wrap it in within parentheses. Whoops. So I actually need to wrap that within parentheses. That'll fix that. Okay, so let's just I'm going to drop a breakpoint on there. Let's give it another go. And I'm going to set there's my debug preference. It's on the continue. I really don't want to debug. I don't really want to just spitting out tons and tons of data. So what are we going to do? Let's just go ahead and see. We'll just deal with it. So it'll go ahead now. The window's already open, so it's smart enough to realize window's already open. Close and reopen it. So now we're going to go ahead and throw. I'm just going to quickly see what this does. There's an error trying to format system.string with 10.6. Okay, so that's not working. Name is kind of being weird. Why is it? I think the reason why is because it's got an array there. I don't think it needs to be an array. I was going to try and make it an array, but I think I'm just going to need to fix that. So what we can do here is just go ahead and reload that. So let's rerun our loader. We'll clean that up and go ahead and test it again. So that should be fine. Yeah, that's fine. Let's just quickly throw that out, see what we get. Errors, yep, trying to format date with that. Error message, calling pass, string was not recognized as a valid date time. So for now, if we throw this, we actually get it as an error, and then we get the warning down the bottom. Error code attempting to add the entry. The entry was not saved. So that works. That was really easy to integrate too. Really easy to integrate. Cool. All right, so that's done. So let's actually now pass something that's legitimate rather than not legitimate. So what we can do here, let's just say it's 26th of the 10th, like so. Let's see what happens. So this time it should work. We go value, and we should actually see it. I'm going to drop it down the bottom here. Actually, yeah, I'm just going to drop it here. We should see it being added on the right hand side here when that runs. So it should automatically filter, format it for us. No work needed. Good to go. Let's give it a go. So we're going to run that. Okay, so cannot bind to the parameter because the element is null. What is going on here? Bind to the parameter because element is null. Interesting. So it's thrown an error somewhere. And it's probably because it's here. So we're going to go suss that out now. Let's go suss that out. So let's go there and rerun it. See where it goes. Okay, so we're at the params. Let's just have a quick look. Okay, so we got params. Okay, so element's not being set. Is element present? Element is present. But it's null. Interesting. It's not setting it correctly, the parameters. Why is that? Why is that? Alright, so let's just have a quick look. That's there. Let's just create a quick cache table. See what happens here. Take there. Oops. That's it there. Params.element. It's not there. Why is it not there? It added it. Alright, we're going to write a breakpoint here. Figure out something's going on here. And then we'll see if we can fix it. So let's go ahead and start and restart. So we got params. Oops. Okay, so you can see that is not being set at all. Weird. Maybe because it doesn't exist yet, that's why. That's why. Element's getting set down here. It's null. It's because it doesn't exist yet. Well, if that's the case, we don't actually really need this. Oh, yeah, we do. We can just leave it. We can leave it as that, and then we can just still slide it in. Then what we can do here is we can just do this. And that should fix our issue. Let's give that a whirl. See what happens. So again, we can just rerun it. It'll close, reopen, do what it needs to do. And kick it off. So I can see it set it. And we can see it. Just quickly show here. You can see here, it's set 10 to the 26th, the 10th to the 26th. So that's the required format that it's set. And you can see it's correct as well. So that's all good. All good. Cool. So that is sorted. So now if we just carry on, I'm just going to continue setting the rest of them. Could not match HTML element number of articles with HTML format structure. Ooh, interesting. Always getting the little ones. Okay, why are we getting that? So HTML number of articles. So if we have a look at our articles, we do have it there. Interesting. Something's not right there. We're going to need to test something. So it looks like it's here. Let's just drop a breakpoint on it and go have a look. Let's just go give that a go. So it's passing the correct URL, so it's auto formatting it now, which is great. So that's being fixed up. I'm gonna set it. It's going to set it silently, continue. It's driving me nuts right now. And I'm just going to flip it, turn it off on the loader. It's don't need it at the moment. So let's just drop that there. Oh, what's going on? It's set your verbose preference anyway. Your HTML data structure. So title of activity, date, title, description, URL, number of posts, number of subscribers, annual unique visitors. But what are we looking at? What's the area we're looking at? Number of articles, yeah. What is the actual area we're looking at? MVP area. Blog website posts. Yes. So if we change to blog website posts, no, number of articles isn't present. This will fail. I thought this was my code. No, my code's actually working correctly. This is the required fields for an article, not for a blog post. Excuse me. So that's why it's failing. Okay, good. That's working. So if that's failing, we can just go ahead and let it continue. It'll fail. All good, no worries. So what we do need to do now is we actually need to create one for that. So if we go blog website posts, you're going to have a number of posts. So we just say number of posts. And then we have a number of unique visitors. So what we might do today as well, because I've got an hour left, we might actually even reconfigure the parameters so that it can actually just invoke a for each statement. Oh, we'll see how we go, because that's a fair bit of rework, just thinking about it. MVP activity kind of needs to be nested within. Yeah, it needs to be nested, and then we need to have a for each loop.
The rest is bullshit.
So let's give this a go and see what happens. So you can see here it's adding them. I kind of don't want it to add, so I'm actually just going to stop it. Within MVP activity, I'm just going to remove the save activity. So, actually, not what to do is do this. And that will basically throw a terminating error. So if we rerun this, see it adds the activity. Just remove that breakpoint. You can see it sets all the content, and then it's going to throw an error. And the reason why it throws an error is because we told it to. That's it. It's done. Good to go. So now we've added formatting to it. It actually makes it really, really easy to use. So we're just significantly building usability onto it, and just building smarts into it so that users don't have to think about that. And they just need to worry about the content, and that's really it. So you can see in here that you have the contribution areas and that, and then yeah, it's just being handled by it. And I really like that approach. I think that's a much better approach to structuring our logic. So yeah. I don't know what to do from here. I was thinking, oh, this might take a little bit longer, but it's not. So I think we might. I don't know. I'm still sitting on the fence about this. I don't know. I really kind of do want to nest MVP activities, so you can pass it within a for each loop, or you can just basically pass the parameters in here. But then I'm thinking about how can we make this, if we make this a loop, it means that I can, within MVP activity, you can just point it to a CSV file. So we can add a parameter called CSV file, and that's it. And then you can just point at the CSV file as long as it's got the dates and the dates set for that specific thing and the correct columns. It'll just suck the data in, and you don't have to do anything, it just do it for you, which should be really cool, because then ultimately all you need to do there is, I'm just thinking about how we'll do that within the actual script block. I'm not sure how we would do it within the script block. I think what I would probably do, it's a really tough one. I think what I would probably do is it would require to have a parameter block set, and then basically you would have a similar structure to this, and then you just basically say article, contribution area, date, value, blah, 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 blah. Another feature I was thinking about was if we specify, let's say we say area, for instance, like so. I was thinking about seeing if we could essentially write logic so that it just automatically, if you specify the parameter block here, it will automatically associate the area, the contribution area, to those values. So you don't even need to do it. You don't even need to specify it in here. This is actually hang on a little bit. So it will do something like this. So you've got your params set like so, and then all you need to do is that, and it won't even run, like it will just automatically do it for you. So if they're not present, it will then look for the parameter area or contribution area, and it will automatically invoke it for you. Because again, then you're just making it even simpler. So then from that perspective, when you are invoking like the CSV file, from CSV file, you don't even, like, the only thing you need to do is have in there the column name, and then the column name of the area, called area and contribution area. And so if it's article, you could just have 50 articles, 50 contribution areas, all your date stuff filled out, and it just goes, okay, that's that. So we could even restructure the logic and refactor it so that, yes, it's you can do it this way. So we can, say area, contribution area, value, and that. But we can, if we're importing from a CSV file, it literally is a straight data one-to-one dump. So the value, so it's looking for area, contribution area, all that kind of stuff. You don't even need to specify a script block. The only thing you need to do is go MVP activity and then just say CSV file, and that's it. It'll just then do it that way. And effectively, you could you would create, just thinking about how I would do this, you would create a script block and dynamically build out that script block and then just invoke it. And so essentially the CSV parameter will just be invoking a script block. It's an interesting way of thinking of it. So yeah, BW was right. You could theoretically go down that path. And that just makes it literally zero effort for anyone who wants to do it, because it does it all for you. It'll write out the DSL for you. So that you don't even need to do that, and then from that it just imports it and runs it. So essentially it's another level on top of what you have. So we've got PowerShell down here, we've got the DSL here, and then we just literally have a CSV file that people can just suck in if they want. and then do that. But for us to be able to do that initially, we will need to refactor MVP activity and rewrite some of the. We're going to need to refactor a fair bit of the code to support that. So what we would need to do would be is MVP activity. We would need to become new MVP activity as a private function, and we need to refactor all this, and then effectively we need to write a wrapper on top of that to kind of handle all that, the test cases and all that kind of stuff, and iterating, handling a CSV file if you choose to use a CSV file. Could be CSV file, we could make it JSON, we could make it YAML, no, not YAML. We could make it a text file if we really wanted to. It could just be so simple. But it also can be quite complicated because you can write your own logic in there. But yeah. Yeah, I like that. So I think we might as well start this. So let me just make a push. I'm just going to call this add value formatting, value element formatting prior to submission to form. Did we actually do anything else in that? We're going to probably want to discard that change. Yeah, I think we're going to have to do it that way, and that simplifies the process a bit more. Makes it a bit easier to work with. Yep, so just go ahead, save all, commit. What do we... That's fine. Alright, so what we need to do now is let's actually start the refactor again. I kind of wanted to build a minimal viable product, but I feel like people are not going to use it. Even if it's in a DSL logic, it's still a little bit too much for people. I feel like it needs to be a one-liner. That's what I honestly feel like. I think BW is right when he mentioned it earlier. It needs to be a one-liner, because then if this is literally a one-liner and you just say like MVP activity, or you can pass in an argument list of different things, yeah, that would make it way better. Like it just means that then with people who are trying to actually import a CSV file, they don't care about the logic. They just care about actually passing the data. So it really says the non-PowerShell people, kind of gives them an ability to actually work with this module. So we're not. So even people with basic, it's people don't actually even need to really know PowerShell. They just kind of need to install the module, which you can just go to the gallery, go grab it, just copy and paste it into PowerShell, go install, and then basically literally just connect. Once you've connected, just structure your CSV, plug it in, go for it, and that's it. That would be it. And people wouldn't need to do anything. That would be nice and easy for them. Some people might want to actually have the logic itself, like so, but I think we just go down that path. Alright, so that's going to make it there's a lot of challenges that we need to do here. One of them is obviously we need to refactor our code so that we can remove area and contribution area for it to test the parameters. I think we can do that now. So we're not going to break it out yet. We're going to still keep it the same. So the reason why I want to do that is because we can test this concept initially here. So we can say area contribution area without having to rewrite that and refactor the entire set of code. So first thing that happens we're going to need to do is look at the activity script block. So this is where it actually tests to make sure that the data is available. So we're going to need to step into a lab for a sec. So let's create a script block, SB, and let's create some parameters. Let's just call this param P1, P2, and let's just say host P2. So if we go script block, .invoke, and we just say A, nothing happens because we didn't pass second parameter in. So if we pass second one, then we get a print. Cool. Alright, but what I'm not interested in that is I'm interested in just getting a list of the parameters. So if we go script block.asc param_block.parameters, and see there are our parameters. So if we go .name, whoops, and we can basically say two strings, see what its default is. Just some object. Also helps if I can spell. I'm thinking, wow, this just keeps going. Cool. Alright, so we can get our parameter names out, which is good. And then effectively we can actually associate the parameters. So if so what we can say is so that we're assuming there's no additional MVP activity script blocks, which is perfectly fine. Ensure that the area is present and that it's a single instance. So let's say if the area count is 0, so first thing, let's just get the parameters. Let's just get and let's just go fixture.st .paramblock.userPath. And so what happens here is if it's 0, oh goodness gracious, we've got a few things going on. What we can do is we can say if area count is equal to 0, and if we can say see if there's anything in localized data. Nope. Okay, so what we can say is if area count is equal to 0 and command parameters, so if it's not contained area, now it's case insensitive, so that's perfectly fine, then throw. So this means that as long as if the parameter exists, it doesn't care, because it then will associate to that parameter. but we'll need to rewrite this logic will need to be used again when we actually come to association. So if there's already a I'm just thinking about how I'm going to do this. I think I might even need to refactor this code so that it actually returns an object, because right now it doesn't return anything, it just tests the script. So what I'm thinking I might do here is we need to actually return an object. And the object that we're going to return effectively basically talks about the test status. Now, we don't care about what we care about here is that does it exist? Does the parameter exist? And the user, does the command exist and the parameter exist? Does the parameter exist and the command doesn't exist? So basically, returning that kind of content, which will provide us the logic needed to be able to actually run to actually be able to automatically construct as what we need. So if it doesn't exist, because this object can then be used, and this will actually make it really easy to integrate. So let's do that. So what we need to do is go, let's just go some object. Now I'm actually just going to return a hash table. Actually no, we're going to return a full object because we custom object. The reason why I'm going to return a full object is because I don't particularly want to. We don't really need to change anything. So let's just say area. Let's just call it parameterized area. Just make sure that's how we spell it correctly. So the idea here is that we can, since we return that content, it doesn't matter. Like we can then use this data to actually for our logic to work out. So we need parameterized area, parameterized contribution area, like so. Now we actually don't need to write the rest because the rest, once we get the HTML form structure, if we're using a CSV file, we can use the HTML form structure to actually build the define the elements for us. So as long as they've got the name, that's all we need. If you've got the name there, we can just match with that. So we don't even need to worry about value. It'll just write some logic to iterate through value multiple times, which will be perfectly fine. So cool. So this is what will need to be. Okay, cool. So we're just going to say parameterized value is false. It is false. So essentially, this says that if it's true, it means that we're going to use them. We're going to actually use the parameter instead of the actual thing. So the way we're going to do that is we need to add an additional else if here. We're just going to say else if, like so. I'm just going to add another curly closing brace there. Get rid of that one. What we're going to say here is same logic, except we're going to say contains. So this is where we can actually set it. And we can basically say here is equal to true. This will ensure that, this will ensure that that specific object will be treated correctly. So let's get rid of that, clean that up. So now we need to do the same thing for here. So let's just copy and paste this logic like so. Just going to tilt my head down. There's a massive glare in my rear window. So once we've done that for the instance, so we're going to say that, and then we're going to say parameters contains contribution area, like so, and then we're just going to say parameterize contribution area, like so, and set that to be true. And that's it. That's all we need to do. So that's basically fixed that. So that's now those exclusions, or the exclusions, but that feature's been added. So now if we go back to MVP activity here, that will pass in here. The thing that we need to do now though, we need to automatically invoke it. Now the best way to do this I call it parameter commandlets. What we're going to do here is where it says new MVP activity. So when it creates the activity here and prior to the invocation of the script block, so here passing in the parameter value, PARA, and so if we say if parameter command, so we can actually just do this, we can actually just do a for each object. We can say for each object, so whatever's come back, actually we can just then go where, is it a separate? Oh, that's a separate object, so we can actually, we don't need to do that. So what we can do here is we just basically say, we can just do this. We can just say parameterized area. So I love refactoring code and adding new features when it's built correctly. It makes it so much easier to manage. Say if, like so, and what this does is that we can test the output. If it's true, good to go. We can basically automatically invoke it. So then we can just call area here, and then basically pass in the area parameter. This is going to get tricky. We're going to need to extract that specific parameter value. We're going to need to have some fun with that within the script block. I think because we're actually no we don't, because we basically just have the argument list. So effectively what we can do here is do this. And that's it. Because we can just basically the argument list and then specify the area, and that'll actually invoke it there. So that should actually do it, and it should be quite easy. And it's the same thing here, though we can just say contribution area. Like so. and then basically pass in the contribution area. And that's it. Missing statement block. The statement block's there. What's it broken at now? Why is it doing that? Okay, so it looks like we're starting to get issues now. Yeah, we're getting a few issues. That's fine. So what we're going to do is save this, and VS Code will just restart that, close it down, reconnect to it, and see what happens. So what we can do now is just wait for this PowerShell to start, and we'll test this invocation. So I'm going to drop some script breakpoints there. We're going to actually pass that specific configuration in. What we might do is might just go return here. And we might just say area, contribution area, and we'll just put the date in like so. And then what we'll do is we'll copy this, paste that, remove those two. So if you pass an area and contribution area into the parameter itself of the request, it'll automatically add it for you. So you don't need to do it, which is pretty cool. So if it's there, it's there. If it's not, it's not. So just one little thing to make things a little easier for everyone. So now if we've got breakpoints in place, need to reconnect to the portal. So I'm just going to run this manually and connect to the portal mode, and then just load it in. Connect to the computer. Okay, we need to load it. We need to load everything. So, it'll fire up Firefox. Let's connect to the portal. It'll obviously wait. We've got thingy turned off now, so I'm not getting spammed. Okay, so that's done. So now it should automatically redirect, and we should actually start having some action happening. So now, oh, okay, so missing contribution area statement. So that's failed. Okay, so something's not right there. So we're going to need to go and test our code here. So let's go ahead and breakpoint that and rerun our code. Let's see what happens. All right, interesting. The reason why it's happening is because we haven't actually flipped the other side. So I need to add this here. Let's say I need to flip that, and I need to do that. And that should fix it. So if we rerun this now, there we go. So now I'm just going to quickly test this specific line of logic. Yep, cool. So if we F11, F11. What we're going to do now is we've got breakpoints here, so we can just hit F5. It's going to go ahead and browse to the contributions, and then it will try and add one based on the parameter itself, rather than actually specifying the parameter. Okay, so we couldn't match HTML element date with HTML form structure, so there seems to be some stuff that's not going on there for some reason. Could not match HTML element date with HTML form structure. going to breakpoint all around here and see what happened. We're going to rerun it again. So that's fine. Okay, so is it a parameterized area? So it actually didn't return anything, and I think the reason why is because it's in the begin block. Where is it? It's in the begin block. Actually, that should be fine. The reason why it's not returning anything is because it actually HTML form structure. Where's HTML form structure? Or it's test. Because it actually didn't return anything. That's why. This didn't actually return. It just sat there. So if we go right output, do that. That'll fix it. So if we rerun this code, we'll see how we go. So now we have a parameterized area. We should have some code. Yep, there we go. So now this is interesting. Look at that. That's cool. So we are now able to automatically invoke this. So I should be able to literally just run this and it should automatically set it without having any issues. Perfect. Just did it. So if we run it again, it's in the call stack, so it's perfectly fine. It's allowed. Now the contribution areas should be the same, and we should get contribution areas added. That is cool. That's really cool. Like, that is really cool. So that, like, I'm really chuffed about that. So then now if I'm just going to breakpoint save MVP activity, it's automatically added the rest in. So now it's saved. We're going to stop because we don't want to save it, but it's added it all. It's working. So you can see here, it's all there, good to go. So yeah, that's really cool. Really cool outcome. This is a really cool win and some cool features added. That's one step closer, so that now we've just refactored, removed all that. So if it has a parameter set, it'll use that, and you don't even need to specify the commandlet itself. You're still going to need you're still going to need to specify the commandlet for the values, but you know, if you can pass in something like this where you can literally just say area blog post contribution area, and you can basically parameterize it that way, then yeah, it's way cooler. It's a really cool outcome. You don't need to deal with it. Yeah, so I think we're gonna leave it there for today. Adding feature where and sub as substitute as adding feature, parameter can substitute param substitutes commandlet, and that is that, man. Just go ahead and push. Yeah, so that's a really cool outcome today. So we've two little things we did today, but makes a hell of a difference when it comes to actually just making it a little easier, and obviously getting our code in a position where we can actually structure it so that it's to a point where it is really easy to use. So it's just a really straightforward, but it's optimized for efficiency. So yeah, it's a really good outcome today, and we're actually really quite impressed with it, with the amount of work that I managed to get through today. Even though it sees these two tiny little changes and auto formatting and things like that, just dealing with it and making it so That's really cool. So people don't need to worry about that. So yeah, that's a really, really cool outcome for today. So I'm going to leave it there for today because I need to jump off and I need to go out very shortly. So yeah, hope you guys had fun. A very short stream, but very productive stream. I'll be probably back next weekend. I don't think I have anything on, so we will be doing it all again. What we'll probably be doing next week, when I get some time down, I'll be refactoring the code so that it will be more focused on so we can take advantage of actually passing multiple entries into a single MVP activity versus actually having, and then basically having that kind of parameterized testing what Peston provides. So kind of using that approach and then shoving all that code into a sub-function and then basically writing some logic around that. So that's going to be a major refactor of code there to kind of handle all that, but we're putting in all the elements right now to be able to actually handle to be able to do that for us. So that's probably going to be the biggest major piece of work, and then once that's done, I think I'm going to call it finished, and then we're going to start working on tests, and then once we've finished our tests, then we're going to basically work on our build, and once we've got our build, then we're basically going to go and deploy, and then we're done, finished, sorted. So anyway, guys, thank you for joining me. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Very productive, and hope to see you guys next time. Bye for now.